This is Natalie Held, current facilitator of social change and future women running for political office, and you're listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, featuring the resilient and badass Caitlin Clarkson Pereira with an exclusive look into her ruling regarding the use of campaign funds for childcare.
Hi everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I am on with returning guest Caitlin Clarkson Pereira. Hi Caitlin.
Hi, how are you, Kelly?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm a little tired. Yesterday was a long day, but we can get into that during the episode.
So Caitlin was just on, it was like last week, right? It was very recently.
Yes. Yes.
And you'll see, anyone who's listening, if you go to our website, I'll link to that episode so you can listen to that for more background on what we're about to talk about. But Caitlin, where were you yesterday?
So yesterday, I was in Hartford, Connecticut at the State Elections Enforcement Commission regular meeting. And one of the items on the agenda, the last item, of course, on the agenda was the final declaratory ruling for an opinion I had asked for back over the summer, which is regarding child care reimbursements with campaign dollars. So the meeting it was a regularly scheduled meeting. They had actually tabled the initial final ruling from 2 weeks previous, which gave us the opportunity to attract some media attention. And so unlike other meetings that I've been to, I walked in and there were 4 camera people setting up cameras, and all eyes were certainly on the commission to see what their ruling was going to be.
Okay, and to set the stage for this a little bit, Connecticut has 2 different kinds of campaign funding. So this is for not for people running for federal office, but people running for state office, right?
Correct. This is anyone running for state office. The Federal Election Commission in May, due to a request put forth by congressional candidate Luba Gretchen Shirley, they approved campaign dollars going to child care for all federal candidates. So that's check that off the list. That's done with, and Luba is the one that started all of this. And so other various states, after that ruling was made, started asking their ethics boards or their commissions if they could do the same. And states like Arkansas and Alabama and Texas were saying, yes, go for it. And so there came a point when I was running for state representative last year in Connecticut when my 3-year-old, there's only so many events I can bring her to, only so many hours I can bring her out door knocking. My 3-year-old needed a babysitter, and I was doing the math. Her father was traveling for work, and while he usually, helped out as much as he could with a full-time job, he was wonderful and really was a huge piece to me being able to get out there. But with him traveling, I didn't have him, somebody to watch my daughter. And, I saw this trip coming up and was like, oh my goodness, I don't know, I'm going to get out and do all these things. One in particular was we had a Sunday morning set up specifically to get a bunch of volunteers together and knock doors all at the same time. So, here I am thinking definitely can't bring my daughter out in August on a 90-degree Sunday.
Yeah.
So the opinion, I asked the State Elections Enforcement Commission through an email, and they gave me an opinion about a week later that said, no, that child care expenses were personal. And if you've listened to other episodes, you've heard me talk about how they compared them to, personal cell phone bills and buying suits for campaign events. And, my line has been, are you comparing my 3-year-old's well-being and safety to somebody's cell phone bill? Like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I knew immediately that I had to push back. And so we filed a petition saying why their opinion was wrong. And then in February, they gave us a draft ruling. And the draft said that candidates could use privately funded campaign dollars up until the point they were approved for the Citizens Election Program grant. So in order for me to be eligible for the grant, I needed to raise $5,100. So if I do that, let's say February, March, and April, and I hit my goal, and my treasurer submits the paperwork for me to get the grant money, the moment that the folks sitting around the table vote yes, none of my dollars are available. Publicly funded, privately funded, doesn't matter. None of that money is available anymore for childcare. And so the final ruling 2 weeks ago was supposed to be the final ruling, but I think we presented them with some points that they had not expected. And then in the past, 2 weeks, we had Hillary Clinton get involved and the Federal Election Commission get involved. And our governor and our lieutenant governor were standing strongly behind us. And so we thought, maybe we had the momentum to at least change the draft to say that you could use your privately raised dollars throughout the duration of the campaign. And then we could tackle the Citizens Election Program piece at another point. And it wasn't like a huge 100% win, but it was a huge difference from where we had initially come from, right? My no opinion was a no. And the draft was, you can use your dollars up to this point, and then this would have given us the opportunity to use private dollars throughout. But after keeping us on our toes for quite a while, as they were in executive session yesterday, I didn't look exactly at the clock. I'd say at least it was 90 minutes, maybe more than that. So there's all these different media outlets, and there's journalists and lawyers and supporters and friends and my 4-year-old like running around this awkwardly set up office area / kitchenette / copy room. And while they're caucusing, deciding what to do. And I mean, they took so long that I was able to give 5 interviews, three recorded and 2 for the newspaper in the amount of time that they were in the room, as well as like chase my daughter around for a couple of minutes and go to the bathroom and like all these other things. So, we thought maybe they were deliberating for a good amount of time, and that was going to work in our favor. And they called us back in after executive session, and they said that they had approved their original draft, which meant that childcare would only be covered by private dollars up until the grant funding was granted. And it was a moment where I hadn't really picked the proper place to sit. I was sitting sort of behind one of the news cameras and could only see 2 of the commissioners. But I very intentionally got up and walked towards the back of the room, the middle of the room, where there was a doorway and there weren't any seats available because we had brought all these people there for the ruling. So I just stood in the doorway, like sort of casually leaning up against the side of the door, like arms not crossed, like not trying to be rude or anything, but I just wanted to make eye contact with the people who were saying that they were not supporting this. The ironic part being that I moved to put myself in that position, and they all were looking down at the table. And they made a couple points about how they spent extra time on this, and it should be something that should be taken care of in the legislature, even though the lieutenant governor explained very explicitly in her public comments how they were able to make that decision. It was within their jurisdiction. And I quickly stated. The meeting was over. I was like, well, that's not the end of this road. And I made a joke about how I'm going to have to get an apartment across the street. And before I knew it, I turned around and most of the folks who had been sitting around the table, which were the commissioners and a couple lawyers, were leaving out the back door and the back elevator. And I'm standing there, and I was able to sort of like wave goodbye to one of them, not in a snarky way, like in a way that's like, bye, thanks for your help. Like, but we're not on the same side for this, but I also understand that this takes people a lot of time and energy and effort to argue something like this, right? And I respect that. And so to sort of duck away, like, you know, I'm not a criminal who's like about to go get locked up or anything. You know, it was such a strange feeling, and it felt a little bit hostile at that point. And that's not how this should have been, right? We're all supposed to be on the same team. We all are supposed to want what's best for the state of Connecticut. So that happened. And then the adrenaline started to slow down. And I, in a moment of motherhood, my daughter was kind of grabbing for me. And, you know, Parker's only 4. And so I, in my dress and heels, just sat down on the carpeted floor in the middle of the conference room next to where we had been. And she was, you know, up next to me, and I was sort of holding her. And then I realized, as all the press were in front of me, I'm like, I think I'm having my first press conference while I'm sitting on the floor. This is fascinating. So it was a very authentic moment, though, right? It was me wanting to be with my daughter, and me not thinking, like, where's the podium? Or, you know, where do I stand and stand up straight and tall and be somebody who I'm not? It was just like, oh, my gosh, this is exhausting. I'm exhausted. My daughter needs some attention from me, and I'm just sitting down. So, yeah, that was, you know, 3 hours or so in the morning. And then we decided after that to go make some stops to see various constitutional officers and see what they had to say about the ruling, just to make sure that we had people on our side that we needed.
So what was the rationale they gave for not allowing at least the private funds to cover childcare expenses once you're in the public program?
You know, Kelly, that is an excellent question. And I don't know if anybody has the answer to that, which may have been why they ducked out the back door so quickly. There really is no reason. If you're going to say, well, once the grant money is entered into your account with your private money, like, it's all just one big fund. And okay, I get that. But we literally put human beings on the moon. And you cannot differentiate and itemize between privately raised dollars and publicly raised dollars. Like, I'm sorry. That's not even an excuse that I would give to my 4-year-old. Like, seriously, that's not even something I would expect my 4-year-old to buy. And so the fact that they didn't even budge on using the privately raised grants for the duration, there really aren't any words. It's what's the saying? It's shocking, but not surprising.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it takes you back, as we spoke about in the last episode, like, what year is it? What is going on? But at the same time, with everything that's happened in our country over the past couple of years and things that have been happening for decades that some of us are just really opening our eyes to, it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be surprised this happened. Especially because, this is my favorite part, especially because the commission is made up of 5 members. And this commission happens to be made up of 5 males. And I, in a nice fashion, pointed it out in my public testimony. I said, I've never had a woman a governor of color. We've never had a woman president. And the board I'm sitting in front of, there's not a single woman commissioner, which elicited some very interesting reactions, even though it's a fact. And if when they received the initial paperwork for this and they were speaking about it, if they really sat around the table and looked at each other and thought nobody's going to call us on this at some point, then that's just being out of touch in a lot of different ways. So, I didn't want to call them out in any way that was rude. I'm stating a fact, right? We haven't had a female president, and there is no woman on this body that gets to vote on this, sitting in front of me. And the media loved that because of the perception, right? Is it the reason that we got the ruling that we did? Who knows? I'll never know. I mean, it could have been 5 women who made the same decision. But the fact is, perception is reality, especially in a state where we pride ourselves on wanting to have diversity across the board in all of our elected positions and our appointed positions. And you walk in to talk about childcare, which isn't just a women's issue, but we know based on scholarly research that women spend 4 times more time with their children as far as childcare goes than men do. That somebody was going to say to them, hey, I'm just wondering, where's the woman on here that might be offering a different perspective? Mm-hmm. So yes, literally every article that's out there. It's even in the title in some of them, right? All male commission votes against. And then it's in print other places. And then it's, in the intro to, a news piece, Caitlin Clarkson Pereira was at the SEEK meeting today and the all male commission, but, yeah. It's something I didn't, it wasn't an intention when I first asked the opinion, can I have child care reimbursed through campaign dollars? I didn't look at the makeup of the commission. It wasn't something I realized until probably only about 8 weeks ago. But they, the media knows what they're doing, right? And they understand that it is important to get the message out about what our elected officials are trying to do and to draw attention to something that in 2019 just does not make any sense whatsoever. And the best part really being, I spoke to the lieutenant governor this morning, Susan Bryce-Witz, and I thanked her for her comments that she made about the diversity that they strive for on the boards, because a reporter asked her, what do you think about this all-male commission? And she had no hesitation in saying, we need diverse bodies, whether it's people of color, it's women. We need to make sure that we are in a place where we have boards and commissions that are making these really important decisions by folks that represent the people of Connecticut, not just, how the Declaration of Independence was written a couple hundred years ago with a bunch of men around the table. So that was an unexpected piece, which I'm not going to apologize for. It's a fact. It's true, right? It's a fact. And maybe it will, hopefully it will, I'm being told it will, in the future, influence how appointments are made, because we, again, need to have representation around the table that looks like the people of Connecticut.
What are your next steps now?
That is also a very good question. Some of the points that were made by the commissioners were that this should go to the House and the Senate, and this should be a bill, and this is for the legislative body to take care of. And that's all fine and dandy, except the problem is that nobody introduced a bill for that this year, right? And you can't introduce bills anymore at this point. So there's not, an opportunity for somebody to draft up a bill and put it in front of committee and have a public hearing and vote it out of committee. That time is just expired. And so there may be a chance that a bill that's related to campaigns or elections, that there's a chance that someone or some ones could champion this and create an amendment that would be voted on that would say that candidates would be able to use, whether it's privately raised dollars throughout, whether it's grant dollars throughout, whether it's whatever it is, they could create that amendment. But none of this is guaranteed, right? That bills, even if they get through every step they need to, and then they need to be called to the floor and voted on by both chambers, and then signed and approved by the governor, it's a long process. Mm-hmm. And session ends the first week of June, and people have been, fighting and lobbying for various causes that are extremely important, particularly when it comes to our fiscal situation in Connecticut, for the duration of the session over the past couple of months. And so, I've been speaking with some representatives and some legislators to see what representatives and senators to see what our options are. But really right now, my plan is, and you can probably see some of this on some of my social media, my plan is to prepare, especially depending on what the statute of limitations is, to prepare as if the legislation wasn't going to go through, the amendment wasn't going to work, and that we were going to have to go to court. So, not surprisingly, between yesterday and today, there have been quite a few people who have messaged me and called me and said, what can I do? What do you need? And I think I'm still sort of processing everything that happened. So besides making sure that I rehydrate and get some more sleep, I just ask people to be creative. Think of the folks that who might be this rock star law student that somewhere, or something that you saw that somebody was approved for the state election dollars at some point that, you think just doesn't make any sense. And then if the amendment isn't an option, we say, okay, it's time to file a lawsuit. And the friends of mine on my legal team are going to hate me for saying this, but I often go rogue. So I have never, from day one, been concerned about the fact that the reality could be that a Caitlin Clarkson Pereira of the state of Connecticut could be something we were facing here. Now, I never, ever in my wildest dreams, especially in a progressive, quote unquote, progressive state like Connecticut, saw this on the horizon. But this is where we are. This is way more about women, way more about families. This is about the people that we are going to have run and therefore elect and therefore make the laws that paint the future for our state. And also who we have on the bench, so to speak, to go to our congressional seats and to become U.S. senators and maybe go up from there. And time's up. There are no more excuses for having these roadblocks in place that keep people like moms, like working class families, like women of color, like single dads, like whatever it might be. There's just no more excuses for saying to those people, we would love for you to run, but then in the fine print it essentially says yeah, forget it, no way, you're not going to be able to make this work, and we're just going to pretend that you can run. That's over. I'm done with that. And I think through the phone calls and the messages and the amount of swear words I heard from people yesterday, I would say that they're done with that too. And so as long as we just keep doing what we're doing, like doing the research and keeping each other energized, keeping a positive attitude, and making sure that people in Hartford understand that this is really important to us, that, whether I'm sitting in the gallery watching an amendment be introduced and passed and then a bill passed, or I'm standing in a courtroom, this is going to happen. It has to happen. And whichever route that is, when this is done, I would be very relieved. I'd probably take like half a day off before I start my next adventure. But again, like it's just time is up for this. It's been up for a long time, and we're not going to allow the way that our elections have been run in Connecticut and really on the federal level. We're not going to allow them to bar a majority of people who live in these states and across the country from becoming elected officials. We're just not going to allow it anymore.
So if people want to help out, is there something they can do? Should they get in touch with you? How can people help?
Yes. At this point, I'm going to say getting in touch with me via like direct message on Twitter is probably the best way to do that. And, there's been conversation, calling the ACLU and some other organizations that deal with social justice. It's a discrimination case. And, but at the end of the day, this either takes if we go to court, it takes a lot of pro bono hours from awesome lawyers who are willing to give us those hours, or it takes dollars to pay those awesome lawyers. So until the final decision is made, until we say, we're going to go with the amendment first, and then we're going to we'll have the courtroom as a backup. We're sort of in limbo, I guess, until we figure that out. But if we're going to go the legislative way, then we need people in Connecticut and honestly from wherever to write letters and make phone calls and tell the members of the legislative body, like, this is insane. Like, how did this get in front of you? Like, this should not be in front of you. And please vote in favor of this. And if that's not a feasible option, or that doesn't happen, for me and my team to sit down and have a moment of like, oh, hold on, what's going on here? And then once we go into our thoughts and realize this is reality, that we're going to need talent. We're going to need people to do research. We're going to need an amazing litigator and maybe some dollars too. But that's yet to be determined. So I won't start the GoFundMe page yet. But it's really been amazing to have so many elected officials or appointed officials in such high places who have so many things on their to-do list, to take the time to acknowledge that this is important and to say that they do support this, whether it's verbally or in writing. And that just confirms that we are fighting this fight for the right reason. Like, we are on the right side of history. We just need to figure out how to pull everyone else along with us. And if others choose to stay on the wrong side, that's fine. We don't need all of them. We just need to have enough to officially jump over to the right side. So I will let you know as soon as we make a final decision, just so your listeners can help out in whatever ways they would like. We would definitely appreciate that.
All right. Excellent. I think maybe we should also start a Google spreadsheet where we all track what states have laws that are favorable to this and which do not.
So that spreadsheet exists.
Excellent.
I made that right after I got my no opinion, because for a moment, I thought I was crazy, right? I was like, I swear I've read that other states have approved this. And I'm so confused right now. And so the power of Google and, the New York Times and other news outlets, saying this state, this is what they have, this is what they voted on, and fact checking to make sure that that's accurate. As the months went on, May, June, July, August, September, more have been added. Louisiana was added recently, even though they initially said no. Morgan Lamondre, who was on with me last week, was able to put in an appeal, and the body changed their mind and changed to a yes. So, which is fantastic that they were able to do that. And the point here being, in Connecticut, this is going to happen here. It is. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. And then we'd pull up the spreadsheet and we'd say, okay, which other states need this to go through and how can we help those states? And hopefully, I would love to wake up, in 2020 and be like, oh, look, all these states, have this a lot, but that's probably a little ambitious. But that at some point in the very near future, we can look at the list and see them all there and understand that these roadblocks have been removed, not just because some people decided to ask for some crazy request about, childcare, but because this really is what makes the difference when it comes to the people who are going to run for office and make our laws.
All right. Well, I'm thrilled to hear that exists. And so if anyone has questions about what their state allows.
So the Google Doc, if you would like me to share it with you, I'm happy to do that. But yes, and again, that's something that anybody can do, right? It's research. For instance, Maryland allows public dollars to go towards childcare. And so why? Has that always been the case? Did someone have to fight for that? What were the steps along that fight? Those sorts of things are just, right at our fingertips these days. And, anybody, a listener from, next door to me, here in Connecticut to, someone who's on the beach in Hawaii right now, all have the opportunity, to participate in those sorts of ways. And it all helps. It all matters. It all makes a big difference.
Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for coming back on and keeping us updated. And I know we will want to hear more from you as the next steps progress and we figure out if you're going through the legislature or the courts. But thank you for continuing to fight on this issue.
Of course. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm pretty sure the people who know me best are not surprised that this isn't going to go any other way. So, but thank you for giving me a platform to speak about it and to make more people aware and for your support, because the two of you and your listeners have been very supportive from the time I was a candidate and was on last summer, all the way through yesterday when there were retweets and comments and things like that. So the power of social media is impressive. And so sometimes just a couple words of thank you for doing this, or what can I do to help? Those types of things, they add up and they make a difference in the end.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you, and get some rest to get ready to keep fighting.
Yes, I have some mom duties on my list, including doing the dishwasher, and I'm literally standing in front of my daughter's room right now, and I'm not even going to paint the visual, put the visual out there what it looks like. So mom duties for a little bit, and then probably a nap, and then back to work on this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.